Hi, this is Kerry with Multicopter Warehouse and the DJI Colorado store in Centennial, Colorado. And today we're going to do our review of the new DJI Mavic Air 2. We did an unboxing last week and we've had some time to go out and play around with it. So what do we really think? So stay right there. We'll be right back. All right, what do I have here? I've got the Mavic Air 2 Fly More combo, and that's the aircraft, the remote control, 2 extra batteries, charging hub, ND filters. I'll talk more about that. The extra USB cables, a stack of props, power bank adapter, extra joysticks, and I got it right here, the travel bag that it comes with. So very complete package, ready to go. This is going to be a great package for most people who want to get started with the Mavic Air 2. 3 batteries. It's going to give you over an hour of flight time pretty easily. So everything you kind of need to get going. So I want to start with what's different from the other Mavics, right? Let's talk about size. So I'll fold this one up for comparison purposes first. And we'll compare it to the Mavic Mini. So it's a couple inches longer than the Mavic Mini, a little bit taller, definitely heavier than the Mavic Mini, under 250 grams there. And then we have the Mavic 2 Pro. So it's kind of like the difference between the Mavic Air 2 and the Pro is the same as the difference between the Mini and the Air 2. So right dead center in the middle when it comes to size. It's very, very portable, pretty lightweight, and has great flight time. So we'll get to that. Let's also talk about this new remote control. Unlike the other remotes from the original Mavic Air, the Spark, and the Mavic 2 Pro, the phone no longer sits on the bottom. The phone sits on top in this built-in clamp. Now, this isn't big enough to put like an iPad mini into. It's not that big, but it will fit an iPhone 11X Max, which is about the largest size phone that you'll run across, along with something like this Polar Pro case. All fits in there nice. The antennas are built in, so there's no worrying about those breaking or falling apart or getting loose. And if you're holding it properly, they're always in the right orientation, making sure that you get maximum range. So that I really like. There's no extra custom buttons on here, which I thought would have been nice, like some of the other remotes have. But what we do have is we have the gimbal tilt. We have our shutter, which is combined photo and video, so depending on which mode you're in. We have a function button on the front that we can set for different options. And on this side, we have our toggle to go between photo and video mode. We have our power, our tripod normal sport mode switch, and our return to home over here. And on the bottom, this is where the joysticks store. So always a way to keep them handy. Let's talk about specs for a moment. On paper, this looks really good. You've got 4K up to 60 frames per second. Pretty incredible on a small machine. The Mavic 2 Pro doesn't even have that. Before, you would have had to gone to the Phantom 4 Pro to get 4K 60. Now that's at 120 megabits, so that's a better bit rate than the Mavic 2 Pro or the Phantom 4 Pro, meaning there's less compression artifacts. So the image quality should be really, really clean in the 4K modes, and even the 1080 240 frames per second. That extra bit rate is going to mean there's less compression artifacts, giving you a higher quality image. On stills, there's a whole other ball game here. We got 48 megapixel stills. Now, I know some of you are going to be like, yeah, but it's 48 megapixels on a small sensor. And that's true, right? Just cramming more megapixels doesn't mean an image is going to be better. But it is 48 megapixels on a 1/2-inch sensor, which on a small drone is pretty impressive. compared to the 1/2 sensor that was on the Mavic Air originally. So we do have a bigger sensor than the Mini, the Spark, the Mavic, the original Mavic Air, and even the Mavic 2 Zoom. It is a bigger sensor. It's not as big as the 1-inch sensor on the Mavic 2 Pro. So in some cases, like low light conditions, the Mavic 2 Pro is definitely going to be a winner. But having more megapixels does mean you can crop in better, so long as you're starting with a good image. The small sensor, though, means it's probably going to suffer a little bit in lower light conditions compared to the Mavic 2 Pro, but it's still going to be better than the Mavic Air was. So again, falling real squarely in the middle between old stuff like the Mavic Air and the Mavic 2 Pro, and for half the price of a Mavic 2 Pro, it's really hard to beat. Let's get to some of the other specs. The Mavic Air 2 has some incredible flight range, much farther than you can possibly see line of sight, meaning it can go farther than you can legally fly, at least here in the United States. But it does mean when you're in a crowded condition, you're around other Wi-Fi signals, it should be a much better, cleaner, more stable transmission. And we're going up from 720p on the Mavic Air to 1080p transmission on the Mavic Air 2, meaning that image that you're getting is going to be much better, making it easier to focus on things and make sure that everything is dialed in right, that your exposure is good because you have a better quality image coming down. So that's a really nice improvement. And that's because we're going from Wi-Fi on the Mavic Air to OcuSync on the Mavic Air 2. So big plus. It was one of the big downfalls of the Mavic Air was that Wi-Fi. Even in the worst conditions, I was still able to get a couple thousand feet, but this should easily outdo that. Now for the flight app, you're going to use the DJI Fly app and not the Go 4 app. So I was a little surprised at that, but this being more of an entry-level machine, it is going to use the Fly app. Now, that doesn't mean you're really hurting on features, because the Mavic Air 2 actually has quite a bit of features with the intelligent flight modes. You have active track, point of interest, all those same things. They're just in a different app now. And in some ways, they're a little bit more intuitive. The interface is definitely a little more simplified than what you'd find in the Go 4 app. So in some ways, for a new person, I think they're easier to find. For someone who's really experienced with the Go 4 app, you're going to have to poke around a little bit to kind of figure out where everything is, because things are in a different spot. The active track on here is nothing short of fantastic. It does a great job. The question then is, how good is the obstacle avoidance, since it doesn't have side sensors like the Mavic 2 Pro? And well, it does a very good job. So out in the open, like you see here, flying around this light pole, I was able to pull back, move up and down, and it was very, very smooth, just locking onto the top of that light pole. Now, in some cases, you might find that it acts a little strange, especially when you're in the profile mode where it's going alongside of something. What you might end up seeing sometimes is the copter actually pulling back a little bit and rotating slightly, so it's not a flat on profile, it's more of an angled profile, and that's because it doesn't have the side sensors, so it can still use some of the front sensors to actually see if it's coming up on something. So not perfect sometimes, but it still does a great job. So how is the image quality? Well, as you can see from the video that we've been showing, it's really good. I'm very impressed with it. Still quality, phenomenal. Really, really good. I have nothing bad to say about the image quality on either photo mode or video mode. I think they both are extremely impressive. Now, one thing, there's two things I want to talk about specifically with the Mavic Air 2 Fly More kit. The first one is the redesign of the battery charging hub. This one more reminds me of the one from the Spark than from the Mavic 2 series. The Mavic 2 series, you folded it out and then the battery stood up and you slid them in. They were very prone to becoming loose and then not taking a charge, especially if you're someone like me who's out in a Jeep and you're getting a little bouncing around, those batteries fall out all the time. So I actually had to come up with a totally different charging solution than the charging hub. In this case, the fact that the batteries sit flush to the ground, I'll just put one in here, and they hold so well that that same problem now no longer exists. Having this on the floor of the Jeep or in the back somewhere, I have no problems with these coming loose while I'm charging, making sure that I can fly every single time that I want to. Now, another thing is this little box here. Now, surprisingly, and this really shocked me, that the Mavic Air 2 Fly More combo comes with a set of ND filters. So not only is this the first time that DJI has had ND filters available for a product when it was announced, this is the only time they've ever included them. This is always something that you're going to need if you are shooting video. Since there's no adjustable aperture on the Mavic Air 2, you need a way of getting your exposure correct so that you can run the right shutter speed. And when I say right shutter speed, that typically means that your shutter speed is twice what your frame rate is. So if I'm shooting at 24 frames per second, I want my shutter speed to be as close to 1/48th of a second as possible, which in this case would be 1/50th. If I'm shooting in 60 frames per second, I want to be at 1/120th of a second. Well, you can't do that without an adjustable aperture, and that's where ND filters come in. They block the light so that you can get the shutter speed that you want. Now, in many cases, including DJI and some of the big manufacturers out there, their first kits were always like a 4/8/16, with the 4 and the 8 not being that useful in a lot of normal conditions. What you really need is some stronger ND filters when you're out in bright sunlight, especially here in Colorado. It's extremely bright. We're a mile above sea level, and then in the mountains, we're even 2 feet above sea level, and sometimes close to 3. So that lack of atmosphere really makes for bright skies, and a 4, 8, even a 16 just don't cut it sometimes. What did DJI do? They include a 16 as your minimum. That's perfect. I love that. That is a great starting filter. Then you get an ND64. ND64 is going to cover those super bright days, and especially here during the winter when we're shooting in snow and we get a ton of glare, that one's really going to come in handy. And the third one is an ND256. Now this one might not come in as handy as the other ones, but if you're trying to do some long exposure shots, like you just need a second or two of a waterfall to get that silky smooth look, that's where the 256 is going to come in handy. So overall impressions, what do I think? Well, I'm actually pretty impressed with the remote control. I didn't really think I was going to like it at first, but with my phone on the top, I feel it's extremely well balanced. I'll actually go ahead and just slap my phone in there for reference purposes. Like I said, I do have the Polar Pro Light Chaser case on here, which makes this a fairly large phone to be putting on here, and it holds it just perfectly. And I like that feel. For me, it's just a little top heavy, which I prefer over being bottom heavy, and my fingers don't interfere, or my hands and my palms don't interfere with the phone, so I can always see what I'm doing. And before, if I needed to change a camera setting or something quick on the screen, I would have had to take my hand off the control to get to the phone, where here I can reach up with my thumbs and control the settings. That I absolutely love. The range, the downlink, exactly as advertised. Super, super good. The aircraft, well, I love it. I think this is an awesome, awesome machine. Where the Mavic Mini, I like to put in the high end of the toy category, and the Mavic 2 Pro squarely being in the higher level prosumer category, the Mavic Air 2 is the ideal consumer drone. That doesn't mean it can't be used commercially, because it does have extremely good quality. So there's nothing to knock about it in terms of its higher end uses, but it's geared towards the consumer, with the Go app not being used. Instead, it's the Fly app, not being able to do certain things like waypoints or mapping missions with it. That's fine. That's what you have higher end machines for. But for someone getting started, or someone needing a small drone, or even a professional photographer or videographer who just needs a camera in the sky that's going to return really excellent results, Mavic Air 2 is the way to go, and it's half the price of a Mavic 2 Pro. So fantastic purchase. What are we looking at here? We're looking at $799 for the basic system with the remote, one battery, aircraft, the basics. And then we're looking at $988 for the Fly More combo, which comes with the charging hub, the extra props, the power bank adapter, the ND filters, and 2 extra batteries at $115 a piece. Makes for a very good purchase. So do I recommend this? Absolutely. So that's my take on the Mavic Air 2. Thanks for watching. Be sure and order it today here at multicopterwarehouse.com. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.